A city roaring with celebration. New York, 1945. Victory banners stretch across the buildings, brass bands echo down the avenues, and confetti turns the air white. The war is over, and the nation wants the world to see its triumph. But in the middle of that noise, something quiet breaks through. A black soldier, uniform pressed, medals shining, stands outside the parade route. He's not marching, he's watching. Row after row of white units pass him, taking the spotlight he earned but was never allowed to stand in. Cut to a brief flash, a black pilot in a small, windowless office receiving a medal from a single officer. No cameras, no reporters, just a quick handshake before the door closes again. Another flash, a newspaper clipping, a headline about a heroic mission, a photo of a plane, but the pilot's name, his name, is missing. Then a stamped memo drops onto a desk, not for public release. A reminder that some victories were never meant to be seen. Here's the part most people never learned. Abroad, these men were praised. Allied commanders wrote letters calling them exceptional. Civilians in Europe lined the streets to cheer them as liberators. They were heroes, everywhere except the country they fought for. So why did America bury their stories? Who decided that their courage was too inconvenient to acknowledge? The screen cuts to black. And the real question lands, who exactly made them disappear? America steps out of World War II with confidence. Factories hum, soldiers return. The country positions itself as a new global leader. But underneath the optimism, one system refuses to budge: its rigid racial order. The military reflects that order clearly. Units are segregated by design. Black soldiers, no matter their skill, are pushed into labor roles, loading trucks, digging trenches, supporting missions they're fully capable of leading. And yet, on the battlefield, they prove themselves again and again. Their performance isn't just good, it's undeniable. Here's the tension that leaders feared. Visible black heroism challenged the logic of white supremacy. If these men excelled under the harshest conditions, then every justification for segregation cracked a little. And some people in power weren't ready for that. Three groups moved quickly to shape what the public would see. Military leadership first. Many officers worried that celebrating black soldiers would force them into integrating the ranks, something they openly resisted. They weren't just managing troops, they were guarding an old hierarchy. Then came the Southern politicians. They built their careers on maintaining Jim Crow. For them, recognizing black war heroes wasn't just uncomfortable, it threatened the foundation of the political system they depended on. And finally, the media gatekeepers. Editors and publishers could decide which victories became headlines and which quietly disappeared. In a time when the press shaped public opinion, silence was a powerful tool. One smart truth sits at the center of this moment. History isn't only written by what happened, it's written by what people choose to show. And when black soldiers shattered expectations overseas, the system faced a decision it could no longer avoid. Would America honor them or hide them? Here's the part most people never learned. Imagine stepping onto a battlefield where expectations are already set against you. The Tuskegee Airmen and the 761st Tank Battalion didn't just enter the war, they broke into a space designed to keep them out. Their missions were complex, high risk, and strategically crucial. And every time they succeeded, they chipped away at a belief the military had long treated as fact, that black soldiers weren't fit for roles requiring precision or leadership. Their success created a new problem for the people who doubted them. The more these units excelled, the harder it became to justify the limits placed on them. And as they pushed forward, something unexpected happened. In Europe, Allied commanders praised them without hesitation. Local civilians cheered them. Foreign officers wrote glowing reports that traveled up international chains of command. Abroad, they were heroes. At home, their story still sat in someone else's hands. But their achievements didn't survive the trip home. Inside Washington offices, another kind of battle began. newly uncovered memos show exactly what some leaders feared. Public recognition would create political pressure they didn't want to face. So the guidance was simple. Don't highlight these victories. Don't elevate these men. Keep the spotlight narrow. Reporters tried anyway. A few pushed stories to editors, but drafts stalled. Headlines were softened. Some were dropped altogether. Even medals, awards earned in combat, were delayed by months or years. Entire units were left out of summaries meant to record who shaped the war. Then came the twist most people never hear. Certain heroic actions were reassigned in official records, credited to white units that hadn't been there. It wasn't just omission, it was reconstruction. Then came the moment that forced the U.S. government to take a stand. By 1948, President Truman weighed the future of the military itself. The question of desegregation hovered over every meeting. Supporters pointed to black soldiers' wartime performance as undeniable proof of their value. Opponents saw the same proof as a threat. Southern lawmakers pushed back hard. They warned they would block bills, stall budgets, and disrupt national programs if black veterans received too much recognition. Their message was clear. Praise could lead to equality, and equality threatened the systems they depended on. Behind closed doors, a classified recommendation circulated. It advised downplaying the achievements of black units, not because they weren't real, but because acknowledging them might undermine troop cohesion. In other words, the truth was risky. One decision would determine whether these men would be remembered or buried in footnotes. Imagine a single signature hitting paper. Truman signs Executive Order 9981, and with that stroke, the U.S. military is ordered to integrate. It's a historic shift, direct, public, impossible to ignore. For the first time, the country's armed forces are told to dismantle the very hierarchy that kept black soldiers invisible. But the celebration doesn't last long. Backlash builds fast. Newspapers aligned with segregation call the order reckless. Editorials warn of disruption. Commentators question whether black veterans truly earned that praise. Some outlets start revisiting old stories, trying to cast doubt on the very achievements that forced change in the first place. Here's the smart truth. Resistance doesn't always shout. Sometimes it edits. Sometimes it omits. Decades pass before anyone understands how deep the suppression went. Historians digging through archives find gaps, commendations that never reach their recipients, mission logs missing key pages, citations transferred from black units to white ones without explanation. A pattern emerges. This wasn't disorganization, it was deliberate. And then the discovery hits home. Families open new reports, updated military records, late-issued medals. They learn that the stories passed down for generations, stories dismissed as exaggerations or forgotten in silence, were real. Their relatives weren't overlooked, they were hidden. The emotional weight shifts from pride to realization. These men didn't lose their recognition, it was taken from them. Which leaves one question hanging in the air, pushing us into the next chapter. So what happened to the heroes themselves? Imagine stepping off the train after surviving a global war, expecting a fair shot at the life you fought to protect. Instead, many black veterans returned to the same barriers they had left behind. Segregated neighborhoods, schools that shut their doors, GI Bill benefits stalled by local officials who found ways to deny loans and block college admissions. Their heroism, so clear overseas, carried no weight here. Jobs were scarce too. Employers who praised returning soldiers often meant only one kind. Combat records, medals, and leadership roles didn't matter when the system refused to see them. And some of these men lived out their entire lives, unaware that abroad they had been celebrated. French towns remembered them. British commanders praised them in private letters. But the soldiers themselves rarely heard any of it. Their recognition stayed on foreign soil, buried in archives or whispered in memories far from home. It took decades before anything changed. Military reviews, prompted by pressure from historians and families, began reopening old files. Lost medals were finally issued. Misattributed victories were corrected. Some units received honors long past the men who earned them. These corrections mattered, but they arrived late enough that many veterans never saw them. The deeper loss wasn't just personal, it was national. For generations, the public never met these role models. Textbooks skipped them, films ignored them. The country grew up with a version of its past missing a crucial chapter, shaping a distorted sense of who gets to stand at the center of American history. And the part history almost erased was the most revealing: the effort to control the definition of an American hero, and who was allowed to fit that image in the first place. Picture the present for a moment. Debates about representation, military equality, and who gets to be seen as a national symbol are still alive, loud, contested, unresolved. The same forces that once erased Black war heroes now shape arguments about school curriculums, public monuments, and which stories rise to the surface. The pressure hasn't disappeared, it's simply shifted into new arenas. You can trace a straight line from the silence around those veterans to the conversations happening today. The struggle to be recognized, to be included in the country's own narrative, remains one of America's most persistent battles. And it reminds us that history isn't only about what happened, it's about what we choose to acknowledge. A nation can't change the past, but it can choose which truths it finally brings into the light.